Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Nick Dreesen. I'm the president and founder of Families United Action Network. And we have started a segment called Meet the Candidates, where instead of going out to them and we're not having as many events as normal, we started doing a Zoom segment so that not only we can get to know them, they can get to know us, as well as you, the voter, get a chance to hear their responses. So we at Families United Action Network do not endorse any candidates. This is simply a chance to get to know them. Our mission statement is to preserve and protect children and families through repairing and rebuilding current structures and organizations by creating a solid foundation for Iowa's families and the next generations. So today we are joined by Iowa State House candidate for District 88, which is an open seat. This would be Sandy Dockendorff. Now, Sandy, welcome. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day and out of the campaign schedule to come and meet with us. We welcome you. And can you just tell us a little bit more about who you are, why you stepped up to run for office?
Thank you for this opportunity to learn and respond to the concerns of advocates for what I consider to be improved outcomes for children and families. I've spent a lot of my life advocating for local access to high quality health care, for local control for public education and equal opportunity for all Iowans. I'm a nurse. I've worked directly with patients and their families during some of the toughest times in their lives. I've worked for and with community social service agencies and education groups to expand access to healthcare, mental health services, childcare, full funding for public education in our local communities, and also to address the issues of child safety and family services. I've also worked as a budget analyst for the United States government and learned how to read and write a budget and to see what priorities are reflected in a budget. I've also run a small business with my husband. I've donated my time and talents to my church, to our local community health center, to our local business community, and to my local school district. I've successfully run for elective office as a school board member for 3 terms, which I'm finishing up my 3rd term now. I've also spent a lot of time urging legislators to see a vision of Iowa that I see, one that's built on a belief that all people are valued equally, that dignity is more than just having a job, that wages have to allow people to live in the community where they work and to provide for themselves and their families, and that access to healthcare is more than just a slogan, and that every dollar that we spend of the tax money should be spent to serve the people. I believe that these experiences help to make me a good representative for all the people of House District 88. I think people are most unhappy when their expectations are not met, but they get really desperate when their needs are not met. And that's at the point when we need to intervene.
Okay, well, thank you. It sounds like you've been on the front lines of a lot of these protecting children and family issues that we're going to discuss today already for a number of years. So I'm looking forward to this conversation here. Now, Sandy, do you have a website, or if people want to donate or learn more about you, get involved with your campaign, how would they reach you?
My campaign is Sandy for IAHouse.com. So it's Sandy for Iowa House, but it's the postal code for Iowa. So
okay,
Sandy,
and that is
FOR.
Okay,
House.
So that's SandyForIowaHouse.com, SandyForIowaHouse.com. So if you are looking to get involved with her campaign, to donate, or just learn more about her, again, that's SandyForIowaHouse.com. Now, Sandy, let's go ahead and we'll jump on into some of these questions. You already kind of answered a little bit more, but when dealing with the custodial divisions or child protective service separations, just tell us a little bit more of your background, if you have any personal experience. I know you already mentioned that you've had some frontline stuff, but I don't know if it has affected you in your household, or what your connection is.
I have 4 children. 3 of them are married, and 2 are in what I would consider fractured families, where there were children from a previous relationship before we added them to our family, and so we've expanded. And in neither of those cases were there an amicable separation and agreement to how children should be raised, and both situations went through the courts. And in the process of doing that, I discovered that our court system seemed to have preconceived notions about what is best in every case without ever looking to see the specifics and what's best in each of those cases. So I would say that I'm an advocate for reevaluating the way our current legal system deals with family separations.
Wonderful. Go ahead. Didn't mean to cut
But
you
I've
off. Sorry.
also, that's okay. But I've also worked in situations where we've had families that were so fractured that there really wasn't an available parent to pick up the pieces and to be able to pull their families back together. And in those situations where we've needed to make it possible for grandparents to create a loving family environment for their grandchildren, we also haven't done a good job of making that possible. There's a lot of barriers to that. And so I'd like to see that fixed too.
Okay, definitely. And you led in perfectly to the opening questions that we have here. Now, when dealing with our legal standards, when you go to the court, whether it's a child protective service case or a custodial division, they want to use the best interest of the child standard. Now, this is a relatively subjective term as there is no actual definition to it. It could essentially be the mood of the judge that day. So, in your opinion, how, or in your words, how would you define in the best interest of the child? How would you define in the best interest of the family? And how would those two overlap, or would there be significant differences in the definition of best interest of the family versus the best interest of the child?
I'm not sure that I'm the best person to define these terms. I think that probably one of the problems that we have in the current system is that a person or a set of people have made that determination without getting input from a diverse enough population. So I don't think I have a good working definition of any of those things, but I do think that there are some basic things that need to be met in terms of, that we could all agree with, you know, in terms of the physical and emotional well-being of the child has to be primary, I think. I think we could all agree with that. Beyond that, I think that we start getting subjective in terms of how we make these determinations. And I think that when we start legislating a specific remedy, we tend to forget that there is no such thing as normal any place but on a drier setting. So I have a lot of problem with legislating specific definitions, but I understand the need for doing that. I just think that I would like to see a larger group of people involved in that definition. What is it that you folks think that would be a good way of getting that accomplished?
Well, honestly, right now, we still don't ourselves have a good solid definition, as this is such a sensitive and has many facets to it. That's one of the reasons that we are asking, is to try and get the perspective of many other individuals, especially those in leadership position. I think the overall thing would be stability. We would like to see access to both parents whenever possible. Of course, there's neglect, abuse, and other endangerment issues that can come at play that can mess that up. But as a general term, we would like to have that access be available. But again, we don't have a bill on this one. It's something we're trying to seek some answers ourselves, and also to explain to the community that it can be up to the judge's mood that day, and that's something that we don't think is right. We do think that when dealing with children and families, that's a somewhat undefinable, but yet we do need to have some parameters to make sure we are not tearing apart families that do not need to be torn apart.
I can agree with that. I think that there is a definite leaning towards mothers having custody as opposed to fathers, and that fathers are being left in the role of being the visitation. In my case, I have one set in either direction. So, but it isn't easy if you're to be a custodial parent and be the father in this state. And I think that's inappropriate.
And we would definitely agree with you there. We'll get to some more of those questions in just a minute. I'll go ahead with the next one. When dealing with the judicial branch or the Child Protective Services Department of the DHS, that's Department of Human Services, not Homeland Security. But when dealing with those two systems, would you be in favor of more oversight and accountability?
Absolutely. I have thought for a long time that it would be that it's inappropriate, and I'll use an accounting term, which is kind of crass, I suppose, in this conversation, but you don't have the same group of people accounting for the use of funds or the people who bring in the funds. But in the way that we deal with it in Iowa, the people who are responsible for taking children out of families and being responsible for their care are also the ones who are the gatekeepers for the money spent on doing that. And I'd like to see those two things separated. I've thought for a long time that the Department of Public Health would be a more appropriate place for Child Protective Services.
Okay, and you kind of just alluded to one of our other questions here. There was some big news came down in Iowa this week that the governor may have possibly, I don't want to, misjudge here, but she may have possibly misappropriated some funds from the pandemic expenses. So in dealing with any of our government dollars, would you be in favor of an audit to the Child Protective Services Division? Why or why
I think
not?
every division of the government should be subject to audit. I think we should always be responsive to the needs and to the information to the taxpayers, and I can't imagine that we wouldn't be.
Okay. Now, this next question, I'm excited to hear your response. If I can get my video to work here again. I'm very excited to hear your responses again. I'm hearing your front lines activities already, and so I think you'll have a much more of a unique response than some of our other ones. But when dealing with those children when we do need to step in, when the child is endangered at that moment, at what point is it that parental rights should be terminated, that we should not be working towards reunification anymore, that's just the final straw, and we are going to terminate those rights and explore, hopefully, family placement with the grandparents or others, but whichever, foster care or others? When is that breaking point of when the rights should be terminated?
Well, I think at any time that the child's life is in danger is clearly a point when that should occur. I think I'm probably going to fall on the side of child protection. I'm not sure. I think we tend to look at this as being on one side of the line or on the other side of the line, and I don't think that life works that way. I don't think that I can probably see cases where a child parental rights are going to be permanently removed, but I think that those are rare. I think those are horrifying situations, and that there isn't much doubt. But I think that terminating parental rights, unless it's done, unless a parent chooses to do so, I think that we always need to keep that door open, that people can change, that people can find a grace within their life to make room for a child. And I don't think we should ever close that door permanently, unless there are really extenuating circumstances. Where that point is, I think you have to look at where we are keeping the child the most safe. And I am probably going to upset some people here. When it becomes a decision between a parental right and a child's safety, I'm always going to want to fall on the side of the child's safety.
Yep. And that makes complete sense, and that's where we're at too. We always want to keep the children safe. But in your opinion, do you feel that there is oftentimes rights that are terminated from the parents that could have had stronger paths of reunification, more services offered to give them more of an opportunity to be with their children?
I do think so. I think we tend to think of it in terms of everybody fitting into a particular slot. And I think that we tend to try to formalize these relationships. And so once a custodial parent, always a custodial parent. Once you have visitation rights, they're set. And then you don't ever revisit that. And I think that's wrong. I think that parents should be able to come back and say, you know, I want to be more a part of the life of my child. And these are the things that I need to be able to be successful at doing that. I think that we have issues in our state with paying for mental health and substance abuse issues. And a lot of these parental rights decisions are made based on folks who are finding difficulty in those areas. And if we had more funding for those types of services, we'd be able to see more families that were successful together.
Okay, I would agree very much with most of that right there. Now, as families obviously come in all shapes and sizes, and as you said, all these different individual needs that come from each and every family. When there's so many shapes and sizes of the family, the family unit itself is almost impossible to define. It's something that each person has to define individually, rather than can be put into a standardized cookie cutter. This is how we're going to handle all cases.
Agreed.
Do you feel that we provide as many services as we offer, or when it comes especially to the mental health and the drug rehabilitation, I know are ones you mentioned, do you feel that we could be doing a better job of actually providing services?
Sure, absolutely. The problem that we have in this state is we don't have a stable funding source for any of those services. So we don't require parity. We don't require insurance companies to cover mental health services, and therefore there often isn't, even if you have health insurance, and many of these families don't, but even in those situations where they do have health insurance, mental health isn't covered, and substance abuse isn't covered at the same level and at the same rates as physical health types of concerns. So that's part of the problem. We don't have enough people who are here to provide those services because we don't have a stable funding source for them. I mean, who's going to go into the mental health field if there isn't a market for them or a way to get paid for providing those services? So I do think that there's a hole in our society in dealing with those types of concerns, and we don't have the funding available for them. I think that there's a real problem also in terms of, you know, I keep bringing up the grandparent situation because I've dealt with it a couple of different times for several families. At one point, we set up a fund for paying for the legal fees for grandparents to be able to get custody, just so that they could make sure that the children had access to health care. And I think that's a real stumbling block right now legally within the state. So.
And I know that grandparents' rights is something that we've worked on quite a bit too, but we've also had, some mixed ideas and division within even our own organization of the best way to handle that without going against the constitutional rights of the parent, that it's up to them. And of course, there's times when the parents are unfit and what have you, but we still don't seem to go straight to the grandparents always. This is not on our questionnaire, but since you keep bringing it up, would you have any good ideas on how we could help at least get some steps closer for some grandparental rights?
I think that the problem is we have people in decision-making authority positions who don't reach out to the professionals out there who could provide them more nuanced solutions. And I think that it would probably be best if we had another step in the process that brought some other folks involved into the situation, whether they would be counselors or clergy or friends of the family, whatever. There needs to be sometimes a more nuanced look at the whole situation.
Yeah, I agree with that too, and also the using the whole community rather than again just this set path that we were used to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now we sent you two different bills, and I don't suppose that you'd had time to fully digest, especially the first one. It has in the past been called Senate File 2325 with the companion bill of House File 2471. this is something when elected we can go over in more detail, but I'll just kind of set up the premise for you. And obviously devil's in the details, so I'm not asking would you support this particular bill at this point until you comb over the details. But the premise of this bill is that for many of the reasons that you just mentioned, we feel that it would be better to separate the Child Protective Service Division out of the DHS umbrella, much like they did with the Juvenile Correction Facility Department back in the 80s. This is not a privatization, not an expansion of government, just a way to separate those funds so that it doesn't all get commingled in the general funds, be able to make sure that we can more adequately provide services rather than just offer services, as well as to have proper oversight and accountability. Based on just the premise, again, you haven't read the details, so I'm not going to hold you to it, but just on the idea as a whole, does this sound like something you would support and would be interested in carrying if the details are correct?
I'm definitely interested in the idea. I am enamored of the idea of removing child protective services and those related to child protection out of DHS.
Okay.
Whether it ends up as part of public health or whether it ends up in another agency is, up to interpretation and the details.
Yeah. And we feel that not only would this allow for the funds to be more properly used, but it would, we would have, again, we've heard a lot of the more money, more workers, and we feel that this would also give us better money management use and be able to attract more workers because they would actually be able to see a greater success rate, which when you're going to work and you have the worst of things to deal with every day, it becomes more challenging. And we do have a high turnover rate for our social workers, and as does the whole nation. But when we can actually see the smiles on the children's faces and the reunification of those families, it becomes a lot more of a rewarding job. And that is something we would like to work towards for the workers, but mainly for the families and the children that are having to experience this, so that this does not continue to be a cyclical cycle that is bound to repeat itself when we're not funding the proper services and reunification steps.
I think that we tend to try and standardize things as much as possible, but families aren't standard and they're never going to be. And I don't know that that's a goal that anybody has, that they would be standard. I think that of the social workers that I know, it breaks their heart every time they have to deal with one of these cases, and they're so overworked that they can't do the job that they would like to be able to do. I'd like to see us put some other focus on how we can put the supports for families before they break up. There's so much stress on families right now from so many different directions that it would be great if we did more community-based services that uplifted the ability for people to live and thrive within their families.
Yep, and even when having to do removals, hopefully, again, family placement and community placement, so that it's not a complete transplant into a foreign land, foreign language, foreign family, that even the best, I've heard a statement that the worst parents can oftentimes be better than the best foster parents, just because it's their parents. And you never know whether it's going to be somebody who's going to be bound to repeat the same mistakes, or whether it's going to be somebody who uses that to push them to the next level. Again, we want to improve those families' lives and take away as many obstacles and challenges from the children as we can, and definitely at least keeping them safe. Moving on here, though, we would like to know, what would you do to protect parental rights to maximize parenting time with both parents if elected?
Unfortunately, I've been on in those situations where mostly I've seen the worst cases, the situations where the police are called and where there's clearly a wrong side and a right side and a child protective issue. I haven't been involved in very many cases where there wasn't a need to actually have some separation. But I would tell you this: what I have heard of the arrangements for visitation, and I really just like that term. And I know that they call them something different now to get away from it, but they haven't changed the concept. The concept of you're going to meet in a place where you can be viewed and make sure that the child is safe, and you get X number of hours, and then it's gone. I mean, at some point, I understand the need for that, but I don't think it needs to be that case in every case. And so I think that, like I said, I think we need to have more professionals in here, people who can provide guidance on when those types of situations are necessary and when they're not.
And you mentioned that you dislike the term visitation, as do we. One of the bills that we have sponsored the last couple of years would change the word visitation to parenting time. Obviously, there's no legal change in that. That's just a respect. And also, if you treat a parent like a visitor, they're more likely to act like a visitor. Treat them like a parent, they're more likely to act like a parent. That bill has never failed a vote. I believe we're at 11 or 13 votes right now, but we just failed to get scheduled all of the way. So we feel, again, it's something simple. Let's hopefully we won't have to continue to waste taxpayers' time and money on something we already know we can hopefully get that passed this next year. When dealing with custodial divisions especially, do you feel that a child should have equal access to both parents as long as parents are both fit, willing, and able? Why or why not?
Again, I think that there's no one best way in dealing with this. And it's hard for me to separate my own personal relationships and experiences in answering these questions. And I think that everybody who deals with these cases has a similar type of problem. There have been situations where the children have not wanted to go to see the other parent, and the court has forced them to do that. And I have to say that from my own perspective, that is heart-wrenching to deal with. It's heart-wrenching for everybody involved to deal with, both parents and both step parents and both and all the children involved. Is very difficult to deal with those situations. I think that we need to find a way to not to force things to happen, but to allow things to happen, and to encourage situations where children feel comfortable in spending equal time with both parents. I think that when we make it a thou shalt do this, it makes it more difficult than if we say, let's work towards this. And how do we do that?
Okay. Now, there is the second bill that we had sent you. It has been introduced the last couple of years. And again, I know we're past 13 votes on that bill, which again has never failed a vote, but has failed to reach the schedule all the way. A reminder, it only takes 6 yes votes to reach the governor's desk. But this one has been in the past titled SF or Senate File 571. With the current system, would you agree that it's if the parents do not agree, that generally the standard for one parent or the non-custodial would be every other weekend and Wednesdays? Would you agree that that's pretty much a standard?
I would say that has been stated, that that would be a starting point. I don't know that it's ever worked well with school schedules, and with it's probably easier with younger children, but as they get older, it's very difficult to accomplish that type of thing. I think that parents sometimes can be difficult to arrange schedules, but then again, you need a mediator. You need somebody who can sit in there and be the voice of reason in a very emotional situation. And we need to offer that service to parents to help them come up with a solution that fits their families.
Okay, so you think that the weekends, if I'm hearing you right, that isn't necessarily adequate amount of time for bonding. It could also maybe lead to what they call a Disneyland dad, where it's all about the fun, and rather the full disciplinary and all the other aspects that are along with parenting.
Well, it's not only that, it's like, birthdays and holidays and weddings and funerals, and it always gets confused and messed up. And um, it makes it seem as though everybody is supposed to fit in their little round holes, and it doesn't work that way. I think it's more, we need to be fair and fluid. And somebody has said with this COVID-19 situation that we need to be flexible, is the watchword. And I think that in these situations with families that are fractured and working towards resolving issues or learning how to live with their fractured nature, with both partners have already found other partners and have formalized those situations, that they have to find a way to make their family work. And we need to be flexible.
Okay. Okay. So with the every other weekend Wednesday model that is pretty average, do you feel that that's kind of more of a cookie cutter approach of just trying to put everybody in that one box? Okay.
I do. I do.
So the bill that we have introduced at Senate File 571, what this would do would start parents off on equal footing and say, you made the child together, so we're going to assume that you're equal. Now, if there is reasons for to rebut for any reason, neglect, abuse, or even I don't like the color of the shirt that you have on, you could go ahead and go back to court like normal. Now, we would hope that if it was the shirt scenario, that an ethical attorney would stop that right away, and definitely hope that even a quarter-way decent judge would see any through the frivolous lawsuits, and again say, if there's no endangerment to this child, you made them together, we would go with equal. If there is any of those other neglect, abuse, endangerment issues, then is when we start to look at what other models might we need. Now, of course, if somebody's unwilling, unwanting, or schedules don't line up, we'd hope they would already be adults and use mediation and other avenues to come up with their own schedule themselves. But on those advantageous disagreement ones, when it does go all the way to the judge, would you be in favor of that type of scenario, starting off equal and then work backwards, instead of kind of the other way where we're assuming one is going to be non-custodial, reduced down to that visitor? Which do you think is a better model?
Actually, I just prefer that they look at every case as a case, a standalone, not bringing any preconceived notions one way or the other in. I think that equal is a good place to start as a goal, as equal to start with. And I think that there ought to be, I don't know that a decision should be made until after they've gone through all the pieces and determined whether that's going to work out,
Okay.
or whether it's likely to work out.
The second part of this bill, according to the Supreme Court, being a parent should be protected at the highest standard of proof, beyond a reasonable doubt. The Iowa court's laws for custodial division is a preponderance of evidence. So whoever tells the best story writes the best affidavit. The second part of this bill would take that up one notch to clear and convincing evidence, to do exactly what you're just talking about, to sort through that information. So knowing that we're looking to start people at equal, to then go through the facts and to separate it out when they cannot come to an agreement themselves, would you say that that would be a bill that you would be in favor of supporting?
It sounds like something. I'd have to look at the specifics of it clearly, but yeah, I think that would be a goal.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. We're basically almost done here, so just got a couple other ones for you. Now, if we're not going to go down the child support rabbit hole today, we're going to say that we definitely feel that parents do need to financially support their children. We also do feel that there should be some revisions to the child support system and calculations. But when dealing on the state level here, do you feel that it is a good deterrent to take one's professional or driver's license if they are behind on child support? Or do you feel that we're actually creating more problems by doing that?
I think that doesn't sound like, I understand what somebody was thinking when they came up with the idea, but I don't see how that makes sense. If you're going to require somebody to provide funding and support, that you take away their ability to make money to be able to provide it. I think part of the problem we have with the support question is that our courts have been one-sided so much about who has custody that it makes it very difficult. There's always a winner and a loser. If we are less in that environment, then we have a less of a problem with support questions as well.
I would agree completely right there. And again, we got to just find the right starting points. It's not going to fix the world all in one bill. So the last real question of our information we're looking for is, what importance do you feel a stable family environment has on affecting other facets of society, such as the economy, the environment, foreign policy, etc.?
Oh, well, I think that family strife adds to frustration and stress in every part of life. So I'm not sure that stable and family are necessarily reality. I think that there's always some give and take that goes along in families. I would say that we have to be careful that our solutions don't make more problems, and that we should always choose to support the least able person to absorb the stress. So in my case, I don't want to harm anybody ever. I don't want to write legislation that makes winners and losers, but that tends to be the case of what we do. And when we do that, we need to be very careful that we're not creating barriers to success, but we're creating paths to being successful.
Wonderful. Now we are on that final push. We're again talking with Sandy Dockendorff, and her website is Sandy, Foria house.com. Again, Sandy for iowahouse.com. Sandy, on our final word here now, we're on our, again, last 10 days here, so you're asking for people's vote. But other than that, funds, volunteer exposure, what are you most in need of for the last 10 days of the campaign?
I just, folks talking to folks and getting them to vote at this point. You know, I've always said that if I could get every candidate in front of every voter, I would do that before I ever started running for office myself. And I still believe that that's the case. That when people talk to others about the people that they're supporting, that it is much more successful than me talking to strangers. Still, I don't want to talk to strangers. I want to make everybody feel like they can call and talk to me as their neighbor. I think that our communities have been so split and so fractured by politics, by socioeconomic situations, by so many different manufactured differences, that I think that we need to realize what our basic communities used to look like. And when we worked together for common cause, we were much more successful. When my husband and I moved our family to Iowa in 1992, it was a return to Southeast Iowa for my husband. But me, it was really happy transplanting to a community that I have really learned to love. And for our children, we wanted to bring them here because they had roots here in a community that was really a goal for us. We wanted them to learn the basic truths of rural life, where their food comes from, and the value of hard work, of course, but also the importance of community. Since we've been here, I've worked for all the people in my community, and I hope that they would be able to reach out to me and feel confident that they could ask me a question or tell me something, and that I would be able to take that to heart and to learn from them, and they could learn from me too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it's nice to hear, the talk about strong family roots and strong community roots. And we feel that is definitely one of what we need to return to, is looking out for one another, looking out for our neighbor, instead of just looking out for ourselves and how we can get up the hill. How can we all climb this hill together?
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
So again, this is Sandy Dockendorff running for an open seat in State House District 88. And for those who wish to get a hold of her, learn more about her, that would be Sandy for FOR Iowa IA house.com, Sandy for Iowa
That's it.
house.com. And for those who would like to learn more about our organization, you can go to familiesunite.org. You will find a spot up here that currently has our 2020 legislative recommendations, and any of those that you click, you will find more information about those bills, who those bills affect, the language of the proposals. However, we will be updating those in the next couple months to our 2021 priorities. But please also remember to get involved, volunteer, sign up for our newsletter, and to donate. Everybody here in our organization is 100% a volunteer. We do not give to candidates. All of our money goes towards our website, towards literature, towards educating the public. So we would definitely appreciate any help that you can give us. And again, if you're looking for more information on Sandy, it's Sandy for Iowa House, and that's FOR and IA, Sandy for iowahouse.com. Sandy, any last word, any final comments that you would like to leave us with?
I just appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to learn about your organization and your concerns.
Okay, well, we very much appreciate you taking the time to join us today. It's been a great interview, and we got 10 days, and hopefully we'll be setting up some more meetings with you, and we'll talk about things as we move forward. So thank you for your time. Everybody at home, thank you for tuning in. We love you, we appreciate you, and remember to go vote.